seeking to be a faithful, faithful to what God has commanded us to do. We can lay out, and I'm sure he'll do his best to do so. We can lay out a position for you to analyze and look at. But the ultimate convincing of, okay, I'll take it, of you saying, okay, you've got me. The ultimate convincing is not for us to do. We can offer proofs. Proof is different from persuasion. And so
exactly.
So and that's I would say that's a work of conversion that needs to take place in your heart for you to truly appreciate it.
The question is, how do we know, right? Like, what do we know, right? And we can't just make a special pleading case for God, because the way we find out other truths about things like the germ theory of disease, well, I don't know when you guys position evolution, we can get into that too. These things that we absolutely know the Earth is round.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys believe that either, but these there's reasons and evidence that gives that. You want to say, and even like, let's say you're given a medicine by a doctor, you don't know what it is, or we do logic and reason without even thinking about it. Sometimes we're like, well, let's see, what is the evidence? What does this show? Has this been success? Is this a successful medicine or whatnot? We do that everywhere, but I know truth in those ways.
Yeah.
But when it comes to God, well, throw that out the window. I believe God first.
So you think we're saying that?
I'm basically straw manning you.
Yeah.
Because I'm trying to hear an argument. I'm trying to get to the point of why presuppose. Now, why not presuppose magical pixie fairies instead?
Okay.
I hear your question.
That's the problem.
Well,
and that's why it's logically incoherent.
And maybe you can tease us out, but it's the impossibility of the contrary.
To go that route, sure.
To deny God is to ultimately every other worldview that would seek to supplant God's place. It ends in absurdity.
So let me do.
It doesn't. That is just philosophically incorrect. If you want to bring up maybe St. Thomas Aquinas' contingency arguments, like I'm assuming absurdity meaning like infinite regresses.
Things like that.
You need some prime mover. You need some perfect truth. You need some whatever at the beginning.
Well, maybe he's going to go a different way with that.
Could be.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm just gonna say I can explain why I think that's a wrong statement, but we can move on.
Fair enough.
Well, maybe it's helpful, maybe it's not, but we're here, so why not go to it?
Yeah.
Greg Bonson is a great resource on this. Do you know him?
I never heard of him.
Oh, please bank it away in the back of your mind. Greg
I'll
Bonson.
just write him down. Greg.
Great job.
Greg.
Yeah,
Greg.
Greg Bonson.
Yeah. Bahnsn.
I can give you one of these.
Thank you. Greg Bonson. Let's see. What is he?
Oh, he was a
How do you spell
Christian philosopher.
Gregg?
Yeah, just one G.
G and then B.
Bahnsn.
Sen.
Yeah.
Greg Bonson. Okay.
Yep. The best summary of what we're about to talk about comes from him.
Okay.
You can find one of his debates online with an atheist. They go into a bunch of different points, and he goes into this concept that specifically the triune God, as revealed in the Bible, you have a way to indirectly prove God. And he goes on to explain that if you evaluate, let's say, the metaphysics, the epistemology, and the ethics of life, and you're looking for coherence, the only one that will provide coherence through all of those layers is the triune God of the Bible. And so he begins to unpack that in his debate.
Okay.
Now, the reason that's relevant is because I affirm what you're saying. Anybody can make any claim about any top deity. Sure. It could be Allah, it could be pixies, it could be Christian God, it could be whatever. It
could be nothing.
Sure. You can make that claim.
But
part of what helps us see the evidence of whether that's true or not is by evaluating the outworkings of that presupposition through those various kinds of layers, like understanding the metaphysics of reality, epistemology of reality, and ethics of reality. And the argument that we would make is, go ahead, try to do it with Allah. Go ahead, try to do it with nothing. Go ahead, try to do it with pixies. And if you line up those three, you're going to find that it's incoherent. It's
not.
It can
Sorry,
be absurd.
sorry.
That's the claim that we're making. I know you don't agree, but that's the claim that we would make.
Well, let me just so for example, there's a great philosopher. By the way, everyone who's watching this, look this guy up. He's on YouTube. His name is Tom Jump. He's an unknown philosopher. And he has
Tom Jump.
Tom Jump. Yeah, nobody knows who he is.
I think you mentioned about one of our
I did.
discussions. Yeah.
Because of his epistemology, I utilize a lot to show that there can be an objective morality. Oh, I'm sorry, his morality model. There can
Oh,
be,
yeah, yeah,
atheists also have an objective.
I don't know if we have time to discuss that, but I wouldn't mind
Yeah,
discussing
exactly. But he says that anything. So this is a good point. It's like anything that the supernatural can explain, the unknown natural also explains. So you can give it. It doesn't. That's the point.
Unknown natural.
The unknown natural. So you say God. We can say that it's naturalistic pantheism with the same properties. You can just add the same omni properties to naturalism. Let's say it's an unknown natural thing. We don't know what it is, but it has these properties and it explains everything. And it can explain everything that the Christian God can explain, except it does one step better, is it doesn't require extra explanation. So it satisfies the rule of Occam's razor. So Occam's razor, which is the simplest explanation, is usually the best. It's not a hard and true fact, but it's just usually more correct. And you're faced with two or three or more conclusions, you need to just automatically go with the simplest explanation because it's more likely to be true, and until you can prove it wrong. So I could just say, instead of Jehovah or Yahweh, naturalistic pantheism, I could say unknown natural. Literally, and there's no difference.
Supposedly. I would love to go through that with you.
Let's do it.
But let's get a little more precise. What do you actually put at the top? You say that there are no good reasons
Remember,
for
my
God.
epistemology is don't know.
Yeah, so
So don't know. I don't know if it's a god. I don't know if it's pixies. I don't know if it's Allah. I don't know if it's Zeus. I don't know if it's and nothing. I don't know if it's something. I don't know because the universe could be cyclic. It doesn't have to have some infinite regress. It could be a circle instead. So there is no beginning or end. And it doesn't need to go on in a line. Infinite regress is a Western problem anyway. It's not even existent in Buddhism.
yeah.
So that's just yeah. So that's the thing. It's like, again, we're going back to our presuppositions. We're going back to like he may say because you can have a very airtight explanation. Like in science, there's a classic thing they say: just because it sounds good doesn't mean it's true, and they always disprove themselves. And the reason they're doing that is because they go where evidence leads. They're not trying to come up with the best explanation. They're trying to find the truth.
Sure. That would be confirmation bias.
Exactly. And so which is what presupposing. Well, confirmation bias is a little different. Actually, that's a different subject. Because confirmation bias is looking out in the world and seeing that correlates to my thinking. Like when I said earlier, I saw God in everything. It's confirmation bias because it began with the idea that God already exists completely. So I saw God in everything. Like God is right here with us having this conversation, making this a great conversation, and the light and the beauty and the smells and the sound and everything. It's just God's perfect creation. I still have a lot of these temperaments, but without the God part.
Yeah, you should appreciate reality. I'm
Oh,
glad you
it's
do.
beautiful. And I'm sure you learned that in meditation, where that this moment, once it's paid attention to adequately, without the noise of thinking, without the noise of ideas and beliefs and all that, is remarkable. I could even grant it sacred.
So yeah, I would have to then push back on that we're commanded to think and engage thoughtfully and carefully. We're commanded as Christians to love the Lord our God with all our heart, all our mind, and all our strength. So all of the mental capacity and exercise and energy, we're to focus that on a obedient love to God.
Yeah.
And so that's why we do things like this. We do things like this because we desire for people to repent and believe in Christ.
I have nothing but respect, by the way, and especially the fact that y'all are willing to do this. You know how many people these days are willing to challenge your ideas? Like even myself, like if you got the truth, give it to me. Like I'm here, I want to hear it, and I'm willing to change my mind at any moment.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that's rare in our culture, and I think it's so great that you're even throwing this on YouTube and you're making it,
Warts and all.
words and all, just making it about, unless you edit it cleverly.
No, I'm not.
I don't know how you would anyway.
I'll give you my word. I will just be part 1, 2, and 3,
trust
whatever.
you. Don't even worry. I'm not worried about that. Even if you do, I'm not even really worried about it because it doesn't matter about truth, right? Like truth is what matters, not my ego. So, but I think it's remarkable that you guys are willing to sit down and have a conversation, especially for 2 hours on a Tuesday. You know, a lot of people have other things to do, and a lot of people don't want to challenge themselves. And I find that a lot with Christians, they don't want to challenge themselves. Like even at the square, when we do that, 10% of them really want to talk like this. Most of them are like, well, it's just what I believe, it's just what it is, and that's when I go on my way. And actually, it's still what I've heard from y'all. So, to get back
But
to the
do you know why we
conversation.
persist at this? You don't want to know why we persist at this in the face of a lot of people doing just that? 90% of people want to just keep on going because we have a conviction that faith comes by hearing and hearing the words of Christ.
Yeah.
And we do not know who the next person is that God is gonna do a work in them. We don't know.
Yeah.
That's why we spent 2 hours with you just now.
Well, that's why. I mean, I think we have pretty similar motivations other than our fundamental axioms. But really, just if we think something is true, nothing better than a conversation is what will change minds, or not even just change minds, but to really hash out what would be true. Conversation, because we just have a general lack of conversation in this culture, particularly politically and other stuff. I know it's another conversation, so, but it is very, very good that you're as convicted as I am, or you're as concerned about truth as I am, and that you're willing to sit down and have this conversation. So it makes me happy that and even recorded. I think that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But
So
anyway,
you mentioned you studied a little bit of Augustine.
very little. I annotated about 2 years ago. I took his book because I'm trying to enter into the philosophy of religion, a PhD.
Yeah.
And that was I thought, well, I got to learn it from the source. You know, I got to learn these guys from the source. So I started annotating it, but very, very little. Very,
Maybe
very
the most
little.
brilliant mind that the world ever knew.
Well, I wouldn't say that.
And
I would say Darwin.
so did
No,
you?
I'm fine.
I know you're joking.
I am joking. Yeah.
So,
but no, no, actually, I won't totally not grant that. I think Darwin is pivotal for sure
Pivotal, maybe. Okay, I have to grant.
and accurate.
In some, well,
Amazingly accurate.
no, that's a different discussion.
He predicted
Okay,
things that
that's a
he
rabbit
didn't
trail.
know, and we found out now.
That's
Right,
a rabbit
that's
trail.
it.
I don't
We
want to go down.
that one either.
Have you read up on Augustine's his personal testimony? His-
Yeah. He says it in his Confessions in
Yeah.
the beginning. If I remember it correctly, he stole apples with a friend from somebody, and then realized that this was wrong, and asked why is it wrong, and kind of went down this rabbit trail, and then realized that it was God that was the ground of morality. I could be totally butchering that.
Well,
It was a while
it's
back
actually
when I
much simpler than that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure that was in there.
okay. Maybe I
I'm
missed
certain that was part of his makeup. I'm
Is
sure.
he tried to. Anyway,
Well, he was.
excuse me.
He heard some children in the garden singing a song to themselves. It's this little song that they were teaching, little Christian families were teaching their children at the time. Take and read, and he knew what I was talking about because his mother was a Christian.
Yeah, that's
And
right. His mom was.
So he went and took up the text of Scripture, and I believe he was reading the book of Romans. Reading the book of Romans, you know.
Before the Bible was there, by the way.
No, it was before. What was it?
Like all the books were put together.
It might have been a scroll,
Yeah.
but what was it put together into one codex? I don't know if he had one, but he had the book of Romans.
Yeah.
The letter, Paul's letter to
Yeah,
Romans,
yeah.
and reading that, God opened his eyes, gave him a mind to understand, a heart
That's
to
right.
believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
just transformed
Yeah.
right in the moment, and you know he was. If he's not the most brilliant, he's one of the most brilliant people that has existed in history.
Well, you know, of course. See, I'm going to say Darwin or Einstein are one of the most brilliant, or
Yeah.
I think Elon Musk is brilliant too, but really for like information, like Einstein, Darwin, Richard Dawkins, but of course that's my bias. because
they're all
those are
contemporaries,
The,
but
the
except for
contemporaries.
Darwin, too.
Well, I mean, to go back, I think Galileo, people who make real discoveries.
Galileo was a good Christian.
Yeah.
He was submitted to the church.
No.
Sure he
no.
was. He submitted to the church.
So we can go back to that. Galileo, the evidence for him being a Christian is nil. He thought, let's not talk about this.
Yeah, fair
Because I
enough.
think I'm going to start talking about things I don't understand. I'm going to make a fool of myself.
Yeah. But
So be it. He was a Christian. Doesn't matter. He presented he was presented the torture chamber because he asked people, the higher ups, to look through his telescope to show, hey, look, the moon is round.
Yeah.
Hey, look, it's not made of cheese or whatever it was.
No,
And they just refused to do it. They didn't want to.
The Earth is not the center.
It's not the center. That's what
Yeah,
it was.
it
It's
was
a heliocentric
model. Yeah.
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 Like Copernicus came around and
Yeah.
all that. But yeah, the history of science is, to me, the history of science is the history of knowledge, like what we can know
Yeah.
in philosophy. But religion never makes predictions. That's how you can know something is pretty more certain in probability than that. Yeah. So
So what do you do with biblical prophecy?
give me a good one.
Isaiah 53.
Okay. So what does that one say? I'm not familiar.
Let's read it.
Can I use the restroom real quick while you find that?
Yeah.
I'm drinking too much.
Yeah.
And then you get coffee going, and then I get conversation going. Sorry.
History.
Uh,
For Christianity, because you were saying that she doesn't have like the
Oh,
concepts.
yeah. This is good.
Yeah, that
This
has
is
a lot
good.
of the framework.
Well, I'll just tell you, so like, kind of like what I was talking about with, understanding philosophy from an Eastern context, or looking at the same things that Westerners do versus the Eastern context, that they're just complete foreign. So like this first sentence, you may have heard the scripture verse, John. Even hearing that is like, what literally is so odd. Like, why are you even talking about a book? It's just a weird thing for people who have just never come into
Yeah,
contact with
sure.
like a deep devotion to some old book.
Yeah.
And I know you guys don't think it's just a book, but anyway, so it's just
Well,
interesting. So it's like the thing is, if you, I think a way to convince people isn't to throw scripture at them, because you could be. That's why Aquinas took the time to try to make logical arguments for the existence of God, because that's far more convincing for people during the time of the Enlightenment.
Well, it's not.
Well, not during the time of the
It's not
Enlightenment, but that was
just-
far more convincing for people.
It's not. That's a little bit of oversimplification of what
So,
we're trying to do.
absolutely, it is, yeah.
It's not just a. I'm just going to throw scriptures. I'm not even going to interact with you. But there is a certain conviction that God has promised in His Word that His Word will not return void. We do have.
What's that part?
Yeah.
It's that original conviction. It's that precept. It's that presupposition that this is somehow a divine book. That's weird. So, like, if you would say it to
yeah.
like a, I don't know, somebody else.
We are the people of the book.
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is,
There's a lot of people who have many books. That's the other
and
thing,
what
yeah.
the book says in 1 Corinthians chapter 1
Yeah.
is that the preaching of the cross is folly to those who are perishing. And so it's no surprise that those who are perishing, those who are in their sin, who are rebelling against God, it's no surprise that they would find this foolish. They would find this something to be mocked.
True.
But to
Yeah.
those who are being saved, it's the power of God.
So Paul was writing.
Oh, to those who are being saved, it is the power of God.
Yeah, so this is the point, though. It's like, so this is our fundamental difference. It's really just always coming down to this. Is that you're trying to give reason to an already positive belief, rather than going from bottom up. So just even like you just said
Yes.
from like 1 Corinthians, what you just said, Paul. If I could tell somebody, if somebody doesn't know, Paul was writing 2 churches that he set up. Like he was the first, but missionary. He set up a bunch of churches around. And these churches started having problems. They were having worship problems. They didn't understand how to conduct church. They had some basic issues with the whole Christian model, and there wasn't really even a solidified thing yet during the time. And so he's our earliest writer, and he's just basically talking to them and giving them advice. Now, what we do now is we read it and say, "Oh, that's advice for everyone, and it's divine." And that's just want to make that point why it would be weird to somebody.
Well, it's
because that's why it's weird.
Yeah, but the thing is it's advice for it's advice for the people of God.
It was advice for a particular church. That's the Church of Corinthians.
Yeah.
In fact, he probably didn't even write 2 Corinthians. So that's the other thing. How deeply do y'all have you gone into the historicity of the Bible, like how the Bible was formed, what the books were, and all that? So we do all that like historians.
Sure, and there's a wide range of opinions on that.
Yep.
It's not really actually. There's pretty good beliefs. I mean, like Bart Ehrman, this guy I'm actually reading right now. Did Jesus exist? He did exist. We know that historically we can say that he did exist. there's a group of people named the mythicists who think that Jesus was simply a mythical thing, and it was just demonstrably wrong. Like we could very much prove, just like we could prove that Caesar existed, that Jesus existed. Not the same amount of evidence, but we could pretty much assume that that's probably true. So, but the consensus with scholars is that he existed, and but we always go with consensus. So there's not really that. The varying opinions are in like small percentages. So that's another part
Standard
of
of truth.
No, justified truth is not. It's just the philosophical standard of truth. But I don't think there is. Again, there's no certainty.
Well, here,
So then
that's-
you have
that's
to lean on
important.
consensus
You have
or
to-
have
well-
pragmatic understanding.
Well, you have to lean on consensus to lead the consensus of expertise, not consensus of most people. Like I could say, most people believe in God doesn't make God true.
Here, let me.
You
Well,
determine who's the right people that are the individuals to determine that.
I don't. Experts do. So, like, let's say you can't. So, like, you wouldn't go to a dentist to have brain surgery, right?
No.
Do you determine that the surgeon is the expert there?
No, but some human did. Someone else did.
Exactly. So you do that, and that's the best you can do based on probable. So I don't have
best
the
you can
model.
do. Best
Exactly.
you can
Remember, there's no certainty. Your model that there is
hey,
certainty.
real quick before let me just give you something to look up if you want.
I'll look at this guy's argument.
Do another bullet point. Do James White versus the guy you just mentioned, the
Bart Ehrman.
Bart Ehrman, yeah. James
Okay.
White versus Bart Ehrman.
Yeah.
You guys still working on that coffee, or can I clear some of those cups out of your way?
I'm all set.
Yeah, we're all done.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Oh, it's also worth mentioning in the Bonson debate, we acknowledge that debate was lopsided and can be painful to listen to sometimes.
Yeah.
Why? Who was he debating? Was he kind of a? Who was he debating?
He was, it's actually Bonson versus Greg Stein.
Yeah.
Greg Stein.
Yeah, he was a pretty a well-known atheist of his era in the mid '80s to mid '90s. However, just let you watch it.
I'll
I don't want.
I
I don't want
love
to.
debates.
I don't want to
Yeah.
color your impressions of it. But
Sure.
yeah, Greg Stein is yeah. But Bonson has he has a very well-developed catalog of teaching and debates and.
Yeah, I'd love to hear it. I mean, I don't like to dive in too much of theology because it becomes, if you really go into it, it's what I call biblical fan fiction. There's a lot of interpolation into the Bible. A lot of like Jordan Peterson is the expert at this. Where he would read, like you think the 12 verses of Cain and Abel have all the wisdom in the world. There's no way they could have known that without some divine whatever. I would, it's because he's working backwards. But yeah, I'd be happy to listen to that. But again, as long as it's not like biblical fan fiction or like just theology, because theology is rested on the presupposition that God exists, that God is true, God of the Bible, God of Abraham.
Well, that is why we're hopeful you'll watch it, because he unpacks why we think that is the correct way to reason.
Yeah.
To give an indirect proof. I'm not saying it's a direct proof for God, but it is an indirect proof that is helpful.
And that's fine. Yeah, and basically everything in science is indirect, right?
That's why I'm hopeful you'll like it.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
again, varying degrees of probability. Just like, is there a car out there or is there a red pixie out there? Both are indirect.
Yeah.
We can assume one, not the other.
Now, I do want to go back to Isaiah 53.
Yeah.
Okay, so my point about predictions, let me just make this clear before we talk about prophecy. Predictions are an important part of my epistemology because in part of science, it's what they call novel testable predictions, means that we can test it. So, for example, Albert Einstein, when he promoted his general theory of relativity,
Yeah.
he said, if I am right about this, during a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, I
Yeah.
always mix the two. When,
I think it's-
when the moon goes in front of the sun,
Yeah.
That's a lunar eclipse.
When
No, it's a solar
yeah,
eclipse.
It's a solar eclipse.
When it goes
During
in
a
front of the
solar
sun.
eclipse, the light refracts,
exactly.
and
So
you can see what's behind the
yeah,
sun.
it took him forever to take a picture, but he did. So he took a picture and he could see, and he was right.
Yeah.
So he made a prediction about something we didn't know, and then predicted it, and that
Yeah.
that leads way amazing credence to that model.
Yeah.
That's why that model
Yeah.
stood.
But the light refracts because it's refracting on gravity. Is what?
Well,
yeah.
the idea that space-time is curved, right? So it's not that it's about around large masses.
Yeah.
So and it can be detectable by seeing large
Yeah.
masses. But the point is that he made a novel, testable prediction. That's what science is. Another example is that there was a moon. There was a spacecraft going out to take pictures of the moon. There's a particular moon, and the scientist said, I just learned like this 2 days ago. The scientist said, based on gravity and different calculations, he's like, there's probably going to be volcanoes on this moon. And it was one of the moons of Jupiter. We didn't know it. We didn't directly observe it. But then we took pictures of the volcanoes. In fact, it was one of the most volcanoes.
Vulcanus,
Is that a word? Volcanous? What's the word?
volcanic,
It sounds funny.
No. What's the word? Like
Vol-
the islands of Hawaii are
volcanic.
volcanic. Yes, is one of the most volcanic moons we've seen. So we made a novel, testable prediction.
Was that the one that had ice eruptions?
That's it did also have ice eruptions.
Yeah.
It spewed ice out from its poles, but
Yeah.
Titan also is another interesting one too. That's can't remember if that's Saturn or Jupiter. But so my point is that leads so much more credence. So when I go back to, we can all just make claims, like I say, fairy pixies, whatever.
Yeah.
If you can, and when I say that religion doesn't give any good predictions, is that if you can say, okay, take something we know and predict something we don't know.
With the
And-
scientific method applied.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's why, religion doesn't do that for us. But religion makes scientific claims.
Well,
That's the difference. You want to say that this is indeed the way the world is, and that's why there's a conflict. Now, if you were to be like, for me, I think it's a more honest position to say, well, it totally is contradictory, but it doesn't matter. I believe it anyway, and that's fine.
yeah.
That's honest, but it is not reconciled with science.
Well, okay.
Wow. I totally disagree.
Before we get
Well,
to
let's go
Isaiah,
into that then.
before we get to Isaiah 53, let me ask a quick question. Does scientific prediction and discovery does that depend upon induction?
Yeah, certainly. A lot of
Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
In fact, if you're going to bring up the problem of induction,
You've read
David Hume.
Hume, yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's why I say at the beginning of my epistemology, there's no certainty. There's only differing levels of probability, which is a Humean thinking. And that's science. I mean, there is no certainty in science.
Yeah.
There's nothing certain in science. Nothing.
You sound pretty
it's-
certain about that.
Yeah, but that's just semantic
Okay.
argumentation.
So,
It's still important for how you live.
yeah.
Again, that's changing the subject, which is fine. We can talk about it. So if you want to relate how to live based on your way of thinking, then that's a different conversation, right? You can't say because you live a certain way that then this is true, right? Those
Didn't
are
argue that.
You made the statement. It depends how you live, right? Based on a
It changes the way you-
epistemological.
Yeah.
Based on how is that an argument based on what's true?
Well, it definitely serves as an evidence of the internal integrity of a worldview. And so it's
Even if you have the most integritous worldview, if that's we're making up all these words today.
Integris?
Is that good? We should name a planet called Integris. If we have
I think it's an Acura.
please don't look any of this up. Even though it sounds like, again, the thing in science, even though it sounds good, even though it's perfectly, it makes the most sense.
Cogent?
Doesn't mean, well, cogent, it's not cogent. Cogent is about argumentation. A valid argument means that its premises are also true, and it's valid. It makes it a cogent argument.
Yeah, I'm not saying that the coherence of a worldview justifies the truth of what's being claimed. I'm not arguing for the coherence theory of truth. What I am saying is that it helps, to use your language, make it more probable. It gives you greater and greater degrees of assurance or probability that it is true.
I'm saying it doesn't, because like,
Yeah, so it's a fundamental difference.
well, let me explain why it doesn't. And this is why it's because it's literally a totally different branch of thinking. Because you can't, just because, let's say I have a really good lie in my head that I have cancer, I'm going to survive it. I know it, God told me, whatever, or my fairy grandmother told me, whatever. And it gives me purpose in life. It makes me feel happy every day. Does it make it true?
No.
No.